Hey, Jamie, it's good to see you again, back on A Dose of Truth. I always love our conversations. And today I wanted to talk about survival, the frequency of survival, which the global cult keeps us in, because it's much easier to manipulate and mind control people. And, there was this psychologist, Abraham Maslow, who put out this idea of a hierarchy of needs. It's like a pyramid. And if you don't have your basic needs of shelter, food, safety, and that kind of thing, you can't, as a human, rise to the higher levels and to your fulfillment, to your potential, right? For who you could become. And so, no surprise, the global cult does everything they can to keep us in a survival frequency based on like all the fear they pump out, all the terrorism they do on us, whether it's weather or poisoning or frequencies. Um, and so I thought we could talk about that because to me, I'm realizing it's really escalated lately, where they're really going after everyone. They're going after the food supply, they're going after housing, they're going after things at a more exponential rate, at least from what I can see. So I think it's important to talk about that and acknowledge that and see if we can, come up with any ideas and solutions. So why don't you take it away?
Oh, yeah. This has just really actually been on my mind lately. And actually it always kind of has been. It's actually I remember even as a child, kind of like I remember my parents saying, like, just enjoy being a kid and until you have to grow up and worry about bills. And I remember being a kid thinking, why would you worry about bills? Like, you're an adult, you can go get a job and get money. And like I just remember finding the whole way that the world was set up, and adults, I remember being little and looking and thinking how irrationally the world was set up, and that all the adults were just going along with it, even though none of them were happy. They were all stressed about bills. And I was like, well, what are they paying for? Like, why is everybody paying rent? It never made sense to me. I saw right through it even as a child, like that
Yep.
it was just something made up that made no sense. And you know yeah, it's true. They've really been attacking that lately. Like, rents have tripled, in Canada, and I think in the States as well. You would
Yeah,
agree.
they have.
Although
Yep.
I was researching different countries, and it is quite a global thing. Like, really, they've just tripled the cost of like everything everywhere. Um, and for me, what this has to do with, the theme of the show and satanic ritual abuse is, this is how people are enslaved. This is the number one way that all human beings are enslaved, is through rent. Because if you think about it, what makes people have to go and get up and do something they don't want to do every day is to pay for their place to exist. And there's a real spiritual aspect to it, because they're basically saying, like, you owe, and like the clock's ticking, like every 30 days you owe for your existence, even though you're not depleting a resource, you're not depreciating anything, you're literally just occupying space in the 3D reality, and you have a tab that's running constantly. And so a lot of that is mind control, to make people feel like they have to pay for something that is a constructed debt. And I've always hated that saying, earn a living. It's like, no, we actually are alive. We are life. We've been gifted life by the creator of the universe. Like, we don't actually have to earn our living. That's not saying that you should be a bum and not produce anything, or contribute anything. Obviously, if you're consuming something, you should contribute to the labor of what you're going to consume, like whether it's food or building something that you're going to use. That's all fine. But when you actually just have to pay for something you're not using, that is slavery. And the way that it's set up now, and I think there's a quote about it in the Bible that I'm probably not going to quote perfectly, but saying that, as time goes on, um, to much to people that have much, more will be given, and to people that have less will be given. And so you see how this is really actually happening through the rent structure, because people are buying up all the houses as an investment so that they can charge rent on these investment properties, which makes it so that the people with the lease that aren't in a position to buy a house are having their entire income. And like right now, they say it should be 30% of a person's income for housing, but like I've been looking at places and there's like nothing that's not, it's actually around 70% is the bare minimum of what is available for somebody that would have a university degree. So like that says a lot right there that it's a form of slavery because your entire fruits of your labor is going to sustain somebody else. So it's not only slavery, but it's vampirism. And so it's not only vampirism and energy vampiring because money is just a symbol for energy. And so people are being exploited and vampired, but it's also been really normalized where people think it's perfectly fine to act this way. And so you see how everybody likes to talk like they're moral and talk like they care about other people and talk about, that they're not that they don't support slavery. But if they have a chance to get paid, they're perfectly fine with slavery as long as they're the person getting the benefit of that slavery. And so you see all these people that bought their houses in the 60s and 70s that don't even have a mortgage anymore, are taking a young person's labor that's, has to, basically give their whole check just to exist in this person's basement that isn't even paying rent. And so paying not only for their house, but sustaining them. So like this actually is exploitation and energy vampirism.
Yeah. No, that's all such a good point. And when I was a little girl, I would ask a lot of questions that no one could answer. And one of them was, well, but who owns the earth? Like, who decided that they first own any land to then sell it to someone else? And no one could answer me that question because it doesn't make sense. In nature, there's no such thing. And we are of nature. We've been taken out of nature deliberately. But why? When ancient peoples wandered the earth, they just settled somewhere. They built something to live in. They hunted their food or planted their food. The earth and us are in a relationship. There's no ownership, but that then was created and it's totally normalized. And I have noticed it in my lifespan of 60 years being on the planet, how progressively more and more difficult life is economically. When I was in my 20s, I was in the United States. I was doing basically social work, case management. I was making maybe $20,000 a year, and I could afford to rent a place, have a car, pay my bills. Fast forward to today, I don't know any 20-something-year-old who can afford any, not even one of those things, much less all of those things, because the salaries have not risen, but the cost of everything else has, like you said, tripled, quadrupled. And so in terms of even like buying a house, right? If you were lucky enough to have bought a house, like you said, in the 60s or 70s, that's one thing. But a house that you would have bought, let's say in 1970 for $100,000 today could be worth 5 million. But what has the house been gold plated? No. Has it been studded with diamonds? No. I mean, it's the same structure and it's just been lived in for all those years. But now suddenly, because of some magical economic whatever, it suddenly has. So nowadays, you can't buy anything on the very reduced income level that they are keeping people at. Whereas before in the 50s, one breadwinner in a family could afford to buy a home, pay the bills, have a car, go on vacations. The other one could raise the kids. That doesn't exist anymore. Even with both parents working in a family, the parents are sometimes working 2 and 3 jobs each, which of course is all part of the satanic system to break up the family, to break attachment, to have children inculcated in state care earlier and earlier, to have children available to pedophile and traffic. So it does all go together. And the economic stress is a global trauma that they have inflicted on us, and now they are super duper going at it. And I've been reading that big corporations like BlackRock are buying up homes. So
Mm-hmm.
that's it's not like, I mean, it's some individuals, but it's also corporations who
Mm-hmm.
are taking ownership so then they can rent back at whatever prices that they want. No surprise, there's a huge increase in homelessness and it increases every single year. So it's a real big destabilization. They want us in fear. They want us in survival. Because if you're in survival, you can't think of a solution, and you will, in fact, be open to whatever their solution is,
Mm-hmm.
which is takes us into their dystopian transhumanism, 15-minute city, live in a tiny box future that they want from us, right?
Yeah, and it's also like an incentive to become less moral because when
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, everybody likes to believe they're moral, but under certain circumstances they start to compromise their morality for safety and survival, right? And they know this. And so one of the ways that they can promote people to be, more sinful or more out of alignment with natural law is to basically put them in a fear state and then give an incentive for wrong behavior, right? So right now, um, you know, living off the exploits of someone else is wrong behavior, but they're giving an incentive for it. Like they're incentivizing all of these negative behaviors, and it's almost like we're living in a bad monopoly game, right? Where these big corporations, and one of them's actually called Boardwalk in Canada, which is like just kind of in
Wow.
space, right? Because and I've worked actually in social housing as a social worker for a long time. Like I really know the ins and outs of how the housing authority works and all social housing and the housing markets. Like I'm really familiar with this area. I've worked in all different areas of it, and I've also worked in some of the pilot project, like housing first pilot programs and stuff like that. Anyway, so I know what I'm talking about, the way that this housing stuff works, and I've seen it from the inside how the corporations actually work too. And basically what these big companies will do is they will move to a town because they have that buying power. They'll buy all the properties at once. They'll buy all the apartment buildings. Like I've lived in a town of about, I don't know, 200,000 people, where this big boardwalk company comes in. They bought every single apartment building all at once. So we're talking about billions of dollars here, like to buy huge high rise buildings all at once. And then they jack the rent up. Well, there's no other place people can go. So there's no choice. And then there's social housing in Canada. So, like, in order for these people not to become homeless, if they're on income assistance or something, then they start subsidizing some of those people. But there's always like just a line where people are going to fall out. But like, so it's a false market. And so I want to be really clear that I'm not a communist, and I'm in no way promoting communism where everybody gets a free house and everybody get, like, that's not what I'm promoting at all. I actually very much believe in actual real capitalism where there is market forces that would work this out. Now, what we have, and this is ridiculous to me, that humanity in the year 2025 is dealing with something so ridiculous as housing. Like this should have been figured out like millennia ago, right? This shouldn't even be an issue. This should just be something that was figured out long ago and not even given a second thought, as far as I'm concerned. So what we have now is a false market where they're preventing natural capitalism. So people are not, there's no options. You're not allowed to go build your own house somewhere. You're not allowed to go homestead. You're not allowed to build a cabin. You're basically forced into their system. There's people, they put zoning, so you're not allowed to build houses, you're not allowed to construct apartment buildings. Like they basically control everything so that there's a false market which inflates what's there. It's a false scarcity. And then they come in and build certain houses, but they, like, some of these new giant buildings they're building, which are completely overpriced, like it's like $3,000 for a one bedroom apartment in these new buildings. Half of them are still empty though. So they're actually not lowering the prices down to market forces. They're keeping them artificially inflated and then allowing a certain percentage of people just to be homeless so that they can have the higher price at the top. I've also seen this working as a social worker, taking people to the food bank. I took some of my clients to the food bank once, and it was all the most expensive food, like organic chicken, calcium orange juice, like all those kind of high price grocery items that you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to splurge on, the expensive orange juice or whatever. I found it really shocking when I went to the food bank that this was all the food that was there. I'm like, why is this the best food at the food bank? And they said they'd rather throw it out than lower the price. So they would keep the price artificially high for all these high price food specialty items. And then rather than lower the price to market forces, they would throw it out. And they, like, fortunately it went to the food bank, but it was just kind of ironic,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
So yeah, I just really need to stress how much this is problem reaction solution, because they're going to
Yeah.
offer us the solution of communism to come in and save
Right.
everybody from this false inflation. But it's the point I really want to make is this is not a real market. They have interfered with market forces. People want to build houses. People want to rent houses. Also, with the hierarchy, there's something called the inverted hierarchy, which, I would say I have that. Like, I'm not a very materially focused person. I put a lot of value on reading, knowledge, really like things that aren't tangible but are intrinsically valuable are more valuable to me than like physical, abundance and things like that. There's a certain percentage of people are like that, like artists, musicians. You always hear the starving artist. Like those people are just more focused on other things than, being in the rat race. And I just want to say, like, I think it's okay to have people like that, because people they always say, oh, well, if there was no stress put on people to go to work, everybody would just become overweight and lazy and lay around and watch video games and smoke pot. And I'm like, yeah, some people would do that. And if they want to, like, who cares? Let them. I don't really personally care. I'm not, I mean, yeah. And there should be a $200 place for them to rent if that's how they want to live their life. Like, whose business is it of mine? Right. And there should be cheap options for people that want to focus their time on doing charity work, making art, things like that. Like, there should be options for people who don't want to make a lot of money. And there should also be options for people that their dream is to build a big mansion. And if they want to work for it and build it and have that, they should be able to build that and work for it and have that. But when there's no options for people, when they've made it so that everybody has to pay their entire check just to rent a place, that is human slavery. And this
Yeah.
is ritualized abuse. They've normalized it and they've made it seem like we owe them for our existence to be on their earth, and that we have to be their slave just to pay to exist to be their slaves.
I'm thrilled to announce that I have done our first mind control seminar. It was amazing. It was a resounding success. And what I love the most is the discussion, the rich, beautiful discussion that I have with all of you after my presentation. It was so much fun. So thank you to everyone who participated. So here's what people said. This is from Jen. Thank you, Max, for today's seminar on mind control. We are far more than we think and what we have been made to believe. So really, the old make-believe was the script and narrative that they have been force-feeding us forever. It's making something rise in me that is the eternal truth of my nature, far greater than the need to be made to believe anything they say, and propels me into this sacred self. And the more we connect with each other in this frequency of this, the more we dissolve the lies. And this is from Kristen. That was such a great Zoom about deprogramming. Every time I do one of Max's Zooms, I come away feeling uplifted. So good to connect. And from Jill, it was another fantastic presentation and learning experience. Love connecting with you. I truly love connecting with all of you, and I look forward to having a rich and deep discussion with you in the future. Thanks so much, everyone. Yes, that's such a brilliant point. That's exactly correct. And it all is a big conspiracy with all these facets. Like you say, it's completely artificial. Like, I know people in the LA area, and, they burned it. There's clearly, it's weather warfare. And what's interesting is a few months, 2 to 3 months before that whole area was burned down, everyone's homeowner's insurance was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Even renters insurance was canceled. I know a young woman whose renter's insurance was canceled unbeknownst to her a month before. Her entire building burned down. She lost everything and she was able to recoup nothing. I know a couple in their 90s who bought their home 50 years prior, paid insurance on that home for 50 years. It was canceled 2 months before the fire. They have no way to rebuild. So they've actually given all this money to the insurance company, but then conveniently, and it's all with the governor of California was capping insurance supposedly because to be good to the people, like, oh, we won't let, so the insurance companies canceled. It was all a plot working together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens. And then there's property taxes for people that do buy a home. That's another thing. It's like, if I buy a pair of jeans, I don't pay tax on it every year. Like, what the hell is that? And the taxes for the property keep going up and up and up because they revalue the house. They, whoever they are, decide it's worth more. And now what's happening is people are saying, oh, well, all these natural that are not natural at all disasters. So we have to charge more because the house is vulnerable. So the insurance goes up, the property tax goes up. So even if you've managed to scrape by and buy a home in the last couple of decades, they are going to get you out of that home and take it back
Mm-hmm.
by, well, you and I know taxation is theft.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we have been mind controlled to accept it again as normal is because we are in. But your broader point is so good. I think I just want to repeat it, which is what the hell is going on that we are enslaved and paying for our own enslavement. Like, if that's not like the most evil ritual mind control capture of the human race, then really don't know what is.
Yeah, and begging for a place to be a slave. And these new buildings they're building, they're all on closed circuit television. Like you're basically like in a supermax prison where you're recorded all the time. Every time you go in the elevator, you have a key fob. Like you're basically chipped. You're basically chipped, recorded. Like the police at any time could come and get that video and say, "What? How many times did you leave your apartment?" Like, it's really really scary to me. And then it's again, it's gated communities within gated communities within gated communities, and it's like there's so much land. There is enough resources for everybody to have a small home. Like, and I'm not talking, I
Absolutely.
also don't believe in these super mansions people have either. They're ridiculous. Like, people, I mean, back in World War II, you had a little house. There was one living room. There was one, you know, everyone had a bedroom. Like, it's like, that's enough. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that there shouldn't be the option for people that want to work to have more, but there should just be enough to be able to have what you need. Right. And there is enough. This is all fake. This is all a constructed market.
Yeah.
Same with the inheritance taxes now are so out of control. They basically are going to weasel you out of everything. It's called real estate because that is the real estate. Everything else is made up. All of these fractional reserve banking, all of the loans, all of the mortgages, it's all fake. And yeah, you don't own it, Max. You're right. You're paying the property tax. You're paying through your insurance. Why don't we get that money back if we pay for something for 10 years? Same with the cars.
Right.
If you don't, like, yeah, put it all in the
Right.
lottery. And if nobody gets in a car accident in 10 years, then give it all back. Or like give it to one person, like a draw. You know what I mean? Like it should go somewhere, shouldn't just be kept for those companies. And also, it's not voluntary. This is, yeah, sure. If people want to have insurance where they
Right.
all pool their money together, and if something happens, then hey, I'm not going to stop anybody from voluntarily doing that if they want to do that. But forcing everyone else to put money in the pot is, that's slavery. That is not free will. This is like the part that gets me, Max, is just how normalized this has become and how, the
Yeah.
people that are benefiting temporarily for now from their position of owning a few houses, being able to max out their rent, like, they're enjoying it. But it's like, to me, it's like, I've been looking at some of these rental ads and it is so horrifying. Some people want your dog to pay rent. They want a long page
Yeah.
written of why they should rent
Yep.
you the house. And you're
Yep.
not even allowed to have friends or park a car. They're actually building buildings without parking spots now because having a car, you're not going to be allowed to have a car. There's going to be
Right.
no option to have a car. They're
Right.
building all of these. This is all part of the 15-minute city where they're just going to build the places without cars. And if you want a place to live, you're not having a car. And all you need to do is be able to walk across the street and do your job. And that's it. And be on camera and be chipped. Like, I think people need to take this a lot more serious. It's not just like, oh, the housing market fluctuates and there is no cheap options anymore. There is no option for that person that maybe just wants to dedicate their life to doing things that aren't generating a lot of income and just wants to live a simple life in a little place. That should be an option for people. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people need that type of option. You know what I mean? Imagine
Yeah.
being 20 right now. Imagine being 20 and
No,
just
it's
getting out of
horrible.
high school and having to go work somewhere. And yeah, they upped the minimum wage in Canada, but guess what? That just upped it for everything. And now everything's more expensive. And even the people that are profiting off of, being able to charge high rents right now, they're going to be ending up paying for everything too, because it drives the price of everything up. So this is literally the snake eating itself. This is literally like a satanic trick on all humanity where that greed, everybody's personal greed ends up so that everybody gets eaten by the snake. Like it's like that movie, The Box. Have you seen that movie, Max?
No.
The movie The Box with Cameron Diaz. It's a really good movie that I recommend people go and see because that's what it's
Okay.
about is like tempting humans, like, would you, push the button on this box and somebody you don't know somewhere else will die, but you'll get $1 million. And so it's like an experiment they do on people. And anyways, it's a really good movie that I hope people go and watch. It's one of the best movies I've seen in a long time.
Okay, wow. Yeah, no, it's really, I mean, this is a different podcast, but you can't actually own anything because there's no such thing as owning this earth. So the people who run things behind the curtain know this. So if you buy a house, you will see on your mortgage deed that you are a quote tenant in perpetuity. You're not an owner of anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and then if you get a mortgage, if you know Latin and if you look at word structure, it means gauge, it means like a yoke of death, right?
Yep.
Mort means death. And you're paying actually when you get a loan, the act of your signature enables the bank to create this, say it's $500,000, that then gets created because you signed for it. So the bank then gets to make up $500,000 to
Mm-hmm.
simplify it and then loan you that $500 that then you pay them back with a ton of interest. So now they've made over $1 million on that, right? But it's always us. And then lately, in the US of A, there's now this new thing about tariffs, ostensibly to make America great again. Well, and bring manufacturing and all that back to the US. Now, it is true that over the decades that I've lived in America since 1982, I've seen everything outsourced over to China or other places. So the US like doesn't hardly make anything, even a lot of the food's imported now. And that was done because of the plan to basically destroy the United States and move the center of power to China. But now the tariff thing is supposedly to encourage all that to come back and America to produce things, but it's not the case because if that were the case, you would incentivize corporations to come back. You would do it slowly. You would raise prices very slowly. The way that it's being done, all that it means in a nutshell is that us, the slaves, are going to pay more for every single thing we buy: food, cosmetics, automobiles, anything we need because of these tariffs. It's going to be passed down to us like it always gets passed down to us. Everything gets we end up paying for everything. So the question here is, okay, so who's that going to benefit? Because it's not benefiting us, right? And this has been done repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly throughout history. It's the last time, it was probably not the last time, but the time I can think of is during the fake pandemic, where medium and small businesses were forced to close while big corporate businesses stayed open. And they literally, you can look this up, it's proven, gained trillions during. So it was again redistribution of wealth upward. That's all that keeps happening. And if you think of it, we work for their companies. We get a very measly amount in return for all the labor we put in. Then a third of that or more is taken in the form of legalized theft called taxes. Then the little bit that we have left, we pay them to buy their products. So it still goes back to them. So, like, and what are you doing in life?
You just break
What the
even.
hell is that?
You just break even, and the money's not real, like you said, Max. They just make it up, and they don't actually need the rent. They don't need the money. It's all fake. It's not. They don't. They're just making that up because they want you to be busy actually doing actual real things. The money is all just a formality to them that we need more than them. And yeah, what they're really pushing for is a form of feudalism. Like, we're even with clothes, you're not going to own
Yeah.
clothes anymore. You're just going to, like you said, you don't have to pay for your jeans. Well, that's what they want, for you to have to rent those jeans every week and keep paying and paying and never owning. They've done that with everything. I know somebody that just inherited a house, and it was from their grandpa, and the grandpa bought it, like, in the 50s or whatever. And obviously this grandpa had no idea. He just left it to his grandsons and thought he was doing them a favor. But because the price of the property had gone up so much, that basically they would owe the difference of what he paid for the house and what it was actually worth in order. I can't remember like the exact, it's kind of a legal thing. I'm sorry, I'm probably not explaining it right. But basically, the bank assesses the house at what it's worth now, and that would be considered like an inheritance that would be taxed. Like, so they would have to pay the tax on the difference of what the grandpa paid for the house and what it was worth, even though he just lived in it that whole time. They would have to basically pay $200,000 to inherit this house. Like, so they're like, well, we might as well just sell it and pay the taxes and get out of the debt. Like that just shocked me. It's they have a million different weaselly ways to make
Yes.
it so that eventually they're just getting everything. And it's really like, sometimes people, it's like a pimp prostitute relationship,
Yes.
right? Like, I like watching Soft White Underbelly, and I like watching some of the pimps, because you can learn a lot, like get it right out of the horse's mouth. These men will tell you exactly how they select the women, why the women stay, like really interesting psychology. And I think the people on there are being really honest, and you can benefit a lot from listening to what they have to say. And I just remember the first time I heard about prostitution and the pimp keeps all the money. And I remember just scratching my head saying, well, this girl's doing all the work. This guy's not doing anything. He's getting all the money. What, like, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought like the person was lying to me. I'm like, what do you mean she gives all the money to the pimp? That doesn't even make any sense, right? But you look at the whole psychology of a pimp and prostitute, where he convinces the girl that he needs her for protection. She can't do this herself. She can't manage her own money. He's going to provide for her the clothes, the food, the house. Like, this is what our government is, right? They're making it so that we believe we need them. Mark Carney just came into Canada and he said, oh, the government will build the houses now. So we're going to have like Soviet style housing. But guess what? People are going to go for it because they're so exhausted for paying high rents. But guess what? They're still going to pay that high rent once that's built. It's a trick. It's a trick. We have so much more housing. Another thing, I know we're running out of time, Max. Another thing with it's with part of the New World Order is to flood mass immigration everywhere. Now, it's
Right.
not racist to bring this up. It has nothing to do with race. It just has to do with
That's right.
flooding a bunch of people in where there's not the infrastructure to hold that many people, and it
That's right.
drives the price of everything up. And in Canada, they're subsidizing the immigrant rent. Well, they're going working an unskilled labor job where they don't have to speak English, and then they can go live in one of those $3,000 apartments because they're only paying a percentage of their minimum wage. But then for somebody who's not in that situation, you're competing in that same market with somebody who's not paying the 3,000. It's a completely it's so demonic, Max. Like, I think I
It
sort of
is.
understood it before, but what I've been experiencing lately, really looking into it, I'm like, this is actually the, I would say, besides ritual abuse, besides being able to have compartments in people's minds and control people without their knowing, I'd say that this rental enslavement is the number two way that the people that are trying to control everything are controlling everything.
I don't think I can disagree with that, honestly. And yeah, this is the case in America too. In California, uh, if you've been brought into the country illegally, you get free college tuition, free health care, free subsidized rent. But if you're a veteran who went to fight for, quote, for your country, you're on the streets and you
Which
have
is
no resources at all. So clearly that's a planned event. And of course, it has nothing to do with racism because the global cult does not care about any racial group or
mm-hmm,
any gay or transgender group for that matter. It's all part of a bigger agenda. I've said this before and I'll just mention it again. When people think that they have these signs on their lawn saying Black Lives Matter, they're not talking about African American people. They're talking about themselves, the Black nobility, okay, the Black son. So
mm-hmm,
that's not, they like to, just like you have spoken about, the rainbow flag is
mm-hmm,
not about being gay or bisexual or transgender. It's it's programming,
mm-hmm.
dissociative programming. So, everything is a trick, and we will wrap up and maybe we'll have another one kind of on this line of thinking, but I think we covered a lot of good things, mainly what you said. This is pure satanic ritual abuse on the global population. I always say, always, what they did to me and Kathy and Rachel and all my friends, they're doing to the collective of humanity. This is no difference than keeping us in survival, keeping us starving, keeping us in a cage, begging for, the ability to sleep or not be cold or whatever it is. It's the same thing. It's hitting our survival so that we can then be enslaved, mind controlled, harvested on, and, used in any way that they see fit. So thanks for this conversation, Jaymee. If you have any last words, leave them here. But I think this was a really important topic.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everybody will too, because if you think about what probably everybody wakes up every morning and is most stressed about is how am I going to pay my rent and get like it,
Yeah.
everybody they're putting that everybody's focus on that, which is a way to keep their attention up higher, actualize things like creativity, love,
Yes.
aesthetics, things like that. Um, and also just to add to your Black Lives Matter, there's also this whole like dark to light thing, and it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of like the cockroaches coming out into light. It's the externalization of the hierarchy where they operate in the dark. It's the dark coming out into the light. They're coming on the stage saying, we are like, look at Klaus Schwab coming out in his black thing. That's the dark coming into the light. And so that's another one of the play on words they use where people think it means we're switching from dark to light. It's like, no, that's not
No.
what they mean. And I just wanted to leave on a note because I like to take everything back to SRA because that's what I think is the number one thing. But how this relates is, you know, there's people that have been through SRA, have been through like things that people can't even imagine how a human being could be through and to survive. And if you read books like Svali's, and I mean, I've read it in a lot of survivors' books, like when they get out into the world and they escape that cult, because even though they were put under horrible things, and like even it's the same with the military, right? It's really hard, but you get your juice and cookies every day and you don't have to worry about paying rent or anything. You're just going to this kind of infantile thing where they own you, you're a slave, you do what you're told, but like they'll provide you don't have to worry about where you're going to sleep or eat or what they'll tell you when that's going to happen, right? So that's kind of the same thing with people that have been in cults and ritual abuse. They have been through really different things, but then they all kind of have this part in their book where they're like, wow, like when I came out into the world, like dealing with just this different level of like evil and people, the way the world treated them, where they kind of had this fantasy that the world was going to be great when they escaped the evil they were raised and born into. And the struggle of people, like Svali's last book was really going about like she didn't have a SIN card and stuff like to go get a job or, you know what I mean? And she was like, having to go work on these farms and rent these apartments. And, like so many people are staying in like domestic violence situations, like all kinds of things. Like the ripple effect of this is just huge. And so that's kind of all I have to say. I'll just leave it on there. I feel like I'm going on and on because I'm actually really ticked off about this topic. And
Well,
I'll
we
keep
all,
going. I'll cut it there.
yeah, but you know what? We should all be angry about it and we should all be coming up with some kind of way to get out of this, which again is very difficult when you're scrambling to have a place to live, right? That's the whole
Yeah.
point.
And I
So,
think number one that we can all do right now is realize it's a lie and realize it's a truth.
yes.
We don't have to earn a living. We already are living. We don't owe anybody. We don't owe for our existence. We don't owe to occupy time and space in the third dimension. That's all a trick and that's all a lie. And if anybody can just do anything today, just in your consciousness, just to get that into the quantum field, just know that that is a
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah. Deprogram that out of your mind. Yep. All right, Jaymee. Well, thank you so much for today, and I'll see you next time.